welcome back. We got some more great topics. We'll continue with baseball. I'll talk about John Farrell. Today he was announced as the manager of the Boston Red Sox, officially to the media. Well, with a little mixed results, of course. A lot of people, at least he's better than Bobby Valentine, that's what they're saying. But just because you're an adequate manager doesn't necessarily mean you'll be good enough. And for Boston, obviously winning is everything. But how does the Toronto Blue Jays feel in this situation? Because he did burn a bridge with them. AA's hands were tied. But Toronto did come off looking a little bit weak, no?
I think very weak. I think they gave up too much for very little. They got a utility player who at best will be a utility infielder. He's not going to be a starter. I think the Jays had 1 year left in his contract. Jays should have held on to him and got the right deal, and just basically either wait until Boston named their manager and then fired him, and then he doesn't have a job either at Boston or Toronto. Hate to be cruel, but it looks like Toronto just gave up too much and let him go, even though he has a year left in his contract. And I don't think he was very strong in the clubhouse. You look at those young players, at how they started the season, how they ended the season, two totally different teams.
And how do you see it from a marketing standpoint too? You know, you're not necessarily with the Blue Jays or with the Bobcats, of course, but just from that standpoint, how do you sell Toronto now if you have that and that stigma that, hey, you know what, we could pick off whoever we want because you're that weak?
Well, I think if somebody doesn't want to be there, whether it's a player or a coach, he's got to go, especially when you got a young team like that. That could be cancerous. So I think the Jays were kind of dealt a bad hand that way. Yes, it does make them look kind of second rate, I guess, compared to the Red Sox in their division. But look at it this way, at least you have, I guess you could almost say, an ally. Farrell was with the organization. He knows what the Jays have. He knows who the studs under the rocks are that nobody else knows about, that sort of thing. I think for the Jays marketing division, I don't really know how you spin it. I think you just focus on the players like always, right?
It's
going to be
tough.
a tough road ahead. Maybe you go after a guy like Alomar, create some hype. Go after a guy like Ortiz, one of the former Red Sox guys, and just kind of, prove that you're not going to get walked on, that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to watch anyway.
They'll need a manager. Sandy Alomar, of course, is interested. And like you said, David Ortiz could be a guy who could fill in. Let's move on to the NHL and the Players Association. Of course, last Tuesday, when we were here, that things look really good. You heard about that 50-50 deal with HRR, right? Things look positive. There were a few hidden details in there, but overall, I think hockey-related revenue was the biggest issue. 2 days later, the NHLPA offered their counterproposal, which didn't sit too well with Gary Bettman, calling it a step back. Now, should hockey fans be discouraged in this situation? Because if you look at the language that Gary Bettman is using, or is this just more so smoke and mirrors? They're just saying this stuff just for the sake of saying it so they can get a deal done underneath and then maybe surprise fans. I don't know. I'm just confused about the whole situation myself, but your thoughts, guys?
A little bit of a PR war right now. I think, and it's interesting to watch the different sports networks in Canada, all depending who's on the desk, is what kind of spin you get from this. If you have some former players on the desk, guess what? They're going to be throwing everything at the owners, or not giving up and having a bad PR for the owners. And if you have other sports reporters, it's sometimes the players not giving up more. I think right now the big loser out of all is the fans, of course. And how it looks right now, at least according to last week, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, if you would have asked me this time last week, I would have been excited, would have said, yeah, chances are there's an NHL season, but it just seems like it's taken 2 steps back once again. Almost feels like the Cold War, where it's a game of bluffing almost, and I'm just worried that the season ultimately gets canceled because these guys are too stubborn to get it done.
I heard if they don't get together within some time this week, or at least at the end of this week, if there's no resolution, we could see the games in the month of November gone. Never mind the games that are up to November 1st, but that's already done. But all of November will be gone, and it looks like hockey might start in December if they come to a resolution. Let's move on to another discouraging, well, this time when we talk about situation, we'll talk about an athlete, Lance Armstrong. I don't know what you say about this. He officially is erased from the record books, according to the Cycling Federation, International Cycling Federation. What do you guys make of Lance Armstrong, 1? And 2, where does he rate, actually? That's the question. Where does he rate in terms of most infamous athletes in sports?
You mean before or after this all happened?
It could be after, because if you look at what he did before, that was one thing. After, of course.
Yeah, it's funny because he was such a success story. But he obviously had a game plan to, you know, do his thing with his growth-enhancing steroids and market the heck out of Live Strong and all that sort of thing. But I mean, the veil is pierced. It's almost like the Tiger Woods story, right? Like you see a guy held up so high and then he just crashes down. I think it'll be pretty infamous 10 years from now. People will still be talking about it.
So is he like, what, a top 3 guys in terms of infamous sports athletes that have kind of gone wrong?
Right near the top right now.
Yeah.
He's a guy that went out and, you know, he proclaimed his truth that he never took steroids and kept on demanding that he never, and it finally comes out in the witness after witness claiming that he did. And the way they did it, you know, it's embarrassing for him right now. And, you know, sponsor after sponsor has dropped him like a bad habit. And right now it looks like Lance Armstrong's probably going to be one of those athletes that's you're going to look down the road. And he just lied to the public.
Yeah, that's going to be a big issue, right? Thanks, guys. We're going to be back with more, and we'll have Over Under coming up next.